The example scenario for the next videos is one that I encountered in real life a couple of times. There are goods that have special legal requirements for who may purchase them. The customers of the merchant have to provide legal documents which have to be approved by the merchant and authorities before the customers are allowed to purchase those goods. We can use extension attributes to implement part of this requirement. The extension attribute value will be an object called authorization document. And this authorization document will be a property or an extension attribute of customers. I've gone ahead and started the example module. Let me show you what we've got so far. First of all, there is a table definition to store the information for the authorization documents. And there also is a matching model, resource model, and collection. The fields in the table are, well, we have an ID and a customer ID to link the authorization documents to a customer. Then there's a file, a document type, validated at, validated by, validation status, an expiry date, and a field for additional information. So, that's all there is at the moment. Where do we start? Well, first of all, we need to add getters and setters for all these fields to the authorization document. This is actually a requirement if we want to use this class as an extension attribute value. We cannot rely only on getData and setData or magic methods. So let's get to work. Let's start with the customer ID. So this is somewhat of an oddball. The customer ID is a numeric value, but Magento often uses strings as a data type, a PHP string, so I won't add a type hint. And I like my setters to return nothing. Alright, so we have real methods for all the fields, and then internally they simply populate the data array using setData. And then the return accessors will be similar. So public function get customer ID. This will return, let's say, null or an int. So this actually might be a string, right? So, okay, let's do this. So if we have a customer ID, we'll just cast it to an int. Otherwise, we return null. Very good. I'll speed up the video now, so you don't have to watch me do this repetitive task over and over. Okay, so what's our next field? Our next field will be the file. Okay, let's double check. Customer ID, set, get. That's a special case. Set file, get file. Okay. Set document type, get document type. Set validated at, get validated at. Set validated by, get validated. Whoa, missed one. By. Get validated by, set validation status, get validation status, set expiry date, get expiry date, set additional information, and get additional information. Very good. there is a method setID and getID which is inherited from the parent class, from the abstract model. So we don't have to add these here. Very good. Now, the ORM model has all the getters and setters, but it doesn't only inherit getID and setID from the abstract model. There are more public getters that's inherited. Now, Magenta will attempt to use all methods of the class that start with get to fetch the field names that need to be converted into scalar values when being used as an extension attribute. So that will fail when it tries to call getResourceConnection, which is inherited from the abstract model. That'll throw an exception, a serialization exception or something. So that is why we need a clean interface which has only the getters that actually, for the fields that should be part of the type. So this interface is required. The quickest way I know to do this, to extract an interface, is to use the PHP Storm refactoring refactor extract interface. And to make it a little bit quicker, I'll comment out this extend abstract model briefly while doing so. So refactor extract interface. I'll call it authorization document interface. And we could put it anywhere, but it's kind of customary to put these kind of data interfaces into a namespace in our module API data. We'll talk more about this in the videos on service contracts. And that's the matching directory. And you can see it will extract all the methods defined in our class, all the public methods. Okay, so let's get that started. It'll take a while. Okay, so unfortunately my PHP file template is messed up a bit, but that's easily fixed. Okay, very good. And now we can fix this again, and our model has to implement the authorization document interface. Normally that would have happened automatically, but because of this messed up file template of mine, we have to do this manually here. Anyway, good, now that's all done. There's one method missing in here, which is the getID and setID methods, which are inherited from the abstract class. That's why it wasn't extracted here too. So let's add those in too. Public function setID. And we can't define types here because these methods are actually declared on the parent class here. So this is the one, right? So it's just setID, no types. Okay. So back to our interface. Where is it? Here it is. setID and the getter getID. Good. So even though we have specified return types on the signature of most of these methods, all of them, still a return type is required as an annotation in the PHP doc blocks for all of these methods. And we have to do that even if the return types are void. This is a mandatory requirement, even if the return types actually are specified in the method signatures. Leaving out the return type annotation gives us an invalid argument exception with the method that each method must have a PHP doc block and then the method that's missing it. So maybe this requirement will be relaxed in a future version of Magento when the code is able to determine the return types based on the real signatures, but at least up until now, that is Magento version 2.3.3, the return type PHP doc block annotations are mandatory. Thankfully, it's not a lot of work though because of the IDE support. So let's get started. So we can get rid of this here, and this has to be void. I'll copy this because I can reuse this annotation for all the other methods that have a void return type. And this is, let's say int. By the way, these return types don't have to match the real concrete return types. This is good enough, like this. Okay, so that's void. This is string. That's void. This is string. One more. And string. Very good. Now our interface is ready. And we have a model that also implements this interface. What's missing is we now need to configure a di.xml preference to link this document here to this interface, or actually more precisely, to link the interface to the document. So let's create a di.xml file and add a preference for the interface to the concrete type. All right, very good. So let me get rid of the leading backslash there, because Magento Core does the same. Now we are ready to configure the extension attribute. Right? We have the type, we have the interface all set up correctly, so now it can be used. Here's the extension attributes XML file. So we want to configure an extension attribute for the customer interface class. So I'll copy a reference to it. Get rid of the leading backslash. And now it's time to configure the extension attribute code. Let's call this mage2tv authorization document, and the type will be our interface, and this should be a directly closed node. Very good. This completes the first 4 steps in defining a non-scalar extension attribute. So we created the table, and then we created a model with getters and setters. That's basically the first step. I did that before starting to record the video. And then we added all the getters and setters and extracted the authorization document interface. And then we added return types to all methods defined in the interface. And then we configured a preference in di.xml mapping the interface to the authorization document. And then finally, we configured the interface as the type for our extension attribute. Very good. The next part is we need to actually load the data and save the data. So we need to create the plugin methods when the customer is saved and loaded. And we'll do that in the next video.